Welcome to The Explainer. So today we are tackling a really fascinating collision. On one side, you've got the hard, undeniable facts of modern science, right? And on the other, you have these ancient myths and stories, the very things that have given human life meaning for literally thousands of years. But what actually happens when these two massive forces just collide head-on? Let's get into it.
To really grasp this clash, picture this brilliant little moment the great scholar Joseph Campbell once witnessed at a lunch counter. He overheard a 12-year-old boy telling his mom that his teacher rejected his paper on human evolution, basically insisting that Adam and Eve were the first parents. The mother, getting pretty worked up, totally agreed with the teacher, dismissing science as only theories. But the boy, with just that ultimate, unshakable 12-year-old logic, calmly looks at her and says, "Yes, I know, but this was a scientific paper. They found the bones." It's just a perfect, everyday snapshot, isn't it? It perfectly captures how undeniable scientific facts are just completely dismantling literal religious beliefs.
Okay, so let's dive into this. Here is the big question we really have to ask ourselves today. Has modern science made ancient mythology completely obsolete? I mean, if we strip away these literal myths, like a literal Garden of Eden or the idea of a 6,000-year-old Earth, do we end up losing our moral compass in the process?
Section 1, Science Meets Ancient Myth. Let's look at the historical shift.
To understand how we got here, we really have to look at how fast a wave of massive historical discoveries just completely shattered our old understandings of the universe. I mean, think about the timeline here. Back in 1492, Columbus set sail, which essentially begins the end of the old mythological geographies. Crazy fact, he actually thought he was sailing uphill toward a literal earthly paradise. Then, boom, 1543, Copernicus publishes his paper proving the Earth actually revolves around the sun. Fast forward a bit to 1616, and Galileo gets condemned by the Inquisition for holding a doctrine contrary to Holy Scripture. In just over a century, these geographically and astronomically literal mythologies of the past were being, well, totally dismantled.
Now, the medieval mindset, which was beautifully captured by Dante, imagined this very comforting, almost tiny toy room kind of universe. We're talking 7 crystalline spheres and a literal paradise sitting just up there above the clouds. But then we point our modern telescopes at the sky, and what do we see? A mind-blowing cosmos made up of hundreds of billions of galaxies. The sheer scale is staggering. The old myths? They simply no longer fit the physical reality of our modern universe.
Section 2. The Danger of Lost Myths. Let's talk about what happens when these illusions fade.
Here's the thing. When these ancient stories are proven physically false, society experiences this incredibly dangerous void. Historically, whenever communities have their foundational myths discredited by an outside civilization, they disintegrate, and they disintegrate fast. You see, without a mythic structure to maintain social cohesion, societies face extreme disequilibrium. Failing civilizations suffer immensely when their foundational myths lose cultural authority. We literally see it play out as a rise in vice, crime, mental disorders, shattered homes, violence, and just a general, overwhelming despair.
And that creates a massive dilemma for our society today. Think about it. Should our educators be loyal to the supporting myths that actually hold our civilization together, or should they be strictly loyal to the factual truths of modern science? It's a tough balancing act. How can we possibly balance rigorous scientific fact with this deep, completely undeniable human need for meaning?
Section 3, Myths as Psychological Facts. These are the facts of the mind. Now, what's really interesting about finding an answer to this is that it requires a total paradigm shift. We have to realize that we have completely misunderstood what myths were meant to do in the first place. Earlier thinkers like James Frazer and Sigmund Freud, they viewed myths pretty negatively. They saw them as primitive magic based on errors, or even as public neuroses and repressions that science just needed to swoop in and cure. But then Carl Jung and Joseph Campbell came along and recognized something far more profound. They realized that myths are not errors. Not at all. They're vital, positive, life-furthering facts of the mind.
Jung actually called this the collective unconscious. Basically, think of it as the deepest, most foundational layer of our psyche, and it's shared by all of mankind. It's essentially an expression of the instinct system of our very species, bubbling up through archetypes. So sure, while myths are absolutely false if you read them as historical facts of the outside world, they are completely true when you read them as biological and necessary internal psychological facts.
And this brilliantly illustrates the point. Think about newly hatched sea turtles. The very moment they break out of their shells, what do?
They instinctively race toward the ocean, dodging seagulls like tiny action heroes, and they do this without a single lesson. Animals have these fixed, innate releasing mechanisms built right in. But human beings? We aren't like that. Our nervous systems are wide open. We require myths to guide us in the exact same way that instinct guides that little sea turtle.
According to Joseph Campbell's theory, a living, healthy mythology actually serves four absolutely crucial functions to help us navigate life. First up is the mystical function. This is what wakes us up to the sheer awe and mystery of the universe. Second, the cosmological. This offers an image of the universe that actually accords with the science of the time. Third, the sociological. This validates and supports the moral order of our specific society. And fourth, the pedagogical function. This is the one that guides the individual, stage by stage, through a useful, harmonious life.
Section 4. The Inward Mythic Journey. Time for the Mythic Plunge.
Let's move on and see how this builds, because what happens when our society's myths are just so outdated that they no longer work? Well, the unguided mind is basically forced into this terrifying plunge inward, just to find some sort of meaning. Psychologists actually discovered an amazing parallel between the ancient mythic hero's journey and a modern schizophrenic breakdown. They literally follow the exact same 3 steps. First, there's a separation or a deep retreat away from the normal daylight world. Second, a chaotic, absolutely terrifying initiation down in the deep sea of the unconscious. And third, if the person is fortunate enough to survive it, a rebirth and a return to life.
Campbell actually points to a patient named Jesse Watkins who went through and survived this terrifying inward plunge. Describing his return to reality, Watkins said, "When I came out, I suddenly felt that everything was so much more real. I was much more aware. It's incredible. When someone successfully navigates the depths of their own psyche like that, they emerge with what's called a twice-born ego. They have essentially become the heroes of their own internal myth, completely harmonized with nature and with themselves."
Section 5. Balancing Science and Meaning. We really need to balance these two worlds.
The reality is, we just cannot afford to let people drown in their own unguided unconscious. Remember what we said earlier? The human infant is biologically unformed. We desperately require societal imprinting through rituals and myths just to learn how to navigate reality. A purely secular, fact-only education that completely ignores our internal psychological architecture that leaves the individual incredibly vulnerable. It cuts them off from trans-individual purposes and creates this bleak wasteland situation where the world doesn't speak to the person and the person just doesn't speak to the world.
Section 6. A New Global Mythology. Let's look beyond all horizons.
So the crucial point is, where do we go from here? Well, we have to look to our ultimate scientific achievements. The space age has completely transformed our mythological field. I mean, think about the first time we saw the Earth photographed from the Moon. It absolutely shattered all dividing horizons. We simply can no longer rely on tribal, literal myths that constantly divide the world into us versus them. There are literally no more horizons. We are all passengers on spaceship Earth, and because of that, we have to embrace a truly global inward and outward understanding. It's what's been called mind at large.
And here is the beautiful part. Modern science doesn't destroy the magic at all. It actually shows us that we are the universe experiencing itself. The great physicist Erwin Schrödinger hit the nail right on the head. He said, "All of us living beings belong together. We are in reality sides or aspects of one single being." Modern science shows us that we are the mind, the eyes, and the ears of space. The outer vastness we see is actually a reflection of our own infinite inward nature.
Which brings us to our final thought for this explainer. The old literal illusions? Yeah, they're gone. But the sheer mystery of your own existence remains just as profound as ever. So, on this spaceship Earth, with absolutely no more horizons to divide us, what will your new mythology be?